Alrighty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show. I am your host, Alex Beccaro. This is Christopher. Don't call him J. Cole because there is no fall off Condit. Your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmiest of lukewarm opinions. In these trying times, as Villa fans, please go follow, like, rate, review, subscribe, all the spots below our faces. Chris, I'm guessing your nickname was a whole bunch of gibberish to you now.
Yep, 100%. Yes. I am aware of who J. Cole is.
Okay.
But that's about the extent of it.
So J. Cole dropped an album yesterday morning.
Totally heard it.
Called The Fall Off.
Okay.
2 discs.
Obviously.
And it is supposedly his farewell tour. He is going to retire as a rapper from here on out. But unlike him,
right.
there is no fall off for us. I mean, he'll probably have guest appearances or whatever. Maybe he wants to be a producer.
Jay-Z retired like 25 years ago, and he's still out there.
He's got his whole label. He's got Dreamville. He'll be fine.
Right.
Everyone, sorry, before we get into the banter, actually, I should say, mention this in our Bournemouth recap. Holy crap, triple B's in a row. Brentford, Bournemouth, Brighton. That's going to be tough. In our Bournemouth recap, which was released, yesterday morning at this point, Sunday morning, we mentioned that we have some familial obligations, probably will not be able to record a recap or a preview of the next match, but we will be back next week because we love you and we are not going to abandon you for that long. If we do get something out, it's going to be incredibly quick and probably just one of us alone talking into a mic. You guys don't like those as much as our witty repartee, so we don't want to disappoint and decrease our viewership base. Chris, how are you? Have you gotten over Bournemouth yet?
What's that?
Have you gotten over Bournemouth yet?
Not really, but yes. All we can do now is move on to the next one and put that one behind us and hope that there are better days ahead, because that was such a disappointing result. I imagine that the trip home and the sessions with the boss were relatively unpleasant, because I don't think he could have been too happy with the way that the team played. And I will hope for better results in the future. But I'm doing great. Can't complain. A little cold, but I was complaining about that to the folks I was seeing in the last week, where I said I didn't move to North Carolina to deal with cold and snow, and that's what we've been dealing with for the last 3 weeks.
The way you said it's a little cold reminds me of my favorite snowboard movie. It's called What Goes Up, What Comes Down by Nitro Snowboards. Me and one of my best friends from college watched it back in college. We quote it incessantly. The way that some people quote movies like Step Brothers or Wedding Crashers or whatever, we quote What Goes Up Must Come Down. And so there's a point in this movie where one of our favorite guys is sitting on a chairlift. You can tell it's just icy everywhere. And he's just like, it's cold. It's cold. It's icy, frozen. It's lots of skiers. It's cold. Then they just cut to the next thing. And I don't know why. It's become a thing for us. But you just embodied Canute right there. So thank you for bringing that joy to me. Aiden doesn't listen, but Aiden, I'm gonna flip this and send it to you.
Yeah, everybody looks at me and says snowboarder. Everybody.
Yeah, you really catch that steez, Chris.
Sure do. Get it, bro.
That's surfing.
Whatever. Isn't snowboarding just surfing on snow?
No. The mechanics are all different.
Oh my God, the mechanics are all different.
There's no wave behind you. Yeah, I don't know. You're probably right. You're on a board. You're on a surface, right? What is wakeboarding but surfing behind a boat?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Let's steer this ship towards more Villa-centric waters, Chris. And let's talk about Brighton in our match preview. So last time we met, exciting 4-3 victory. Honestly, I think that scoreline probably flattered Brighton a little bit. Villa were fairly on top in this one. Pau Torre's own goal that he really didn't know anything about. and then 2 wonder strikes from center back Van Hecke was really what made this semi-competitive game. But other than that, Villa were really in the ascendancy, multiple different scorers on the day. And so this is a game that I think Villa have gotten relatively a lot of joy out of in recent years. But this season, Brighton sit 13th. They're 7-10-7. They really play everyone close. You look at all their fixtures, very rarely is there more than a 1-goal differential in them, at most kind of 2. And I think that kind of proves the kind of balance that you see in their record, but also the balance that you see in their results. They've beaten good teams, they've lost to bad teams. It just seems very kind of hit or miss because they play everyone so close in that classic Fabian Hurtzler style. Before we get to how they play, though, and I'll get your perception on them so far this year, what I do want to say is they've generated nearly perfectly identical expected goals home and away, 19. The only difference is that at home, they're much better at converting 20 goals as opposed to 14 away, so a -4 away. And then they've been fortunate defensively by about 5 goals, both home and away. The expected goals against at home is 17. They've conceded 12. And away is nearly 22, conceded 17. This game will be played at Villa Park.
Right.
But much like recent matches against the other Bs, Brentford and Bournemouth, they have had quite an upturn in fortunes recently. They only have 1 loss in their last 7, which includes matches against the resurgent Manchester United, Manchester City, and the aforementioned Bournemouth. Chris, what do you think of Brighton?
I think that they're kind of coming up to where you expected them to be at the beginning of the season. Challenging maybe for the European places, but certainly around the mid-table. I think when I was looking over the scouting preview sort of stuff that I go through, the biggest surprise to me, and I know that you sort of mentioned it, the dynamic of their XG, but I think the biggest surprise to me is that Danny Welbeck has 8 goals, and then the next person has 3. So,
which I think is Van Hecke.
I think it is, and 2 of them came against Villa. Yeah, so like, and he's a center back. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And so that makes me understand why maybe they sit 13th right now. But I guess Danny Welbeck at this point in his career, I don't think you could expect to carry a team and in goals, but he certainly is. And I was surprised when I was scrolling through it at the I guess the nice way to put it would be the inconsistency from Matoma, because that's a player that I've always really liked for Brighton. But I think that they're well coached. I think that they have some decent players. I expect Van Hecke to have a hat trick in this game, apparently, because this is his favorite team to score against. But no, I think they're a very good side that are playing I think they have a potentially very good side, and they are playing very well at this moment. I think coming to Villa Park will be a real test for them. So it's not going to be an easy one for Villa. What are your thoughts on this Brighton side?
I'm very glad that Villa are at Villa Park. 2 recent losses notwithstanding, just trust us more. And you obviously see in the numbers that for whatever reason, Brighton convert worse and concede more away from home, even if the underlying metrics are the same. So like there's something there. Part of it has to be the way that Hurtzler sets them up. I do really like him as a manager. I will continue to point out that he is actually American, technically speaking. Very aggressive style, press, attack, high risk, high reward. They give up opportunities, but they're going to create them the other way. I think they're always a fun team to watch. The interesting thing, actually, that I didn't mention about those expected goals against is that they concede those on relatively few shots per game. 10 at home, 14 away, and we talked about how high those XG numbers were. So that to me says that when teams get opportunities against them, they're typically pretty good ones. And so the question for Villa becomes, who is in the attacking positions to convert those opportunities? Or, to call back to our Bournemouth preview, aka Ollie Watkins, is he there to convert them at all when the opportunity is created?
Yep.
I look at a team in Brighton that is fairly good on set pieces, particularly away from home. So they've scored 5 times off set pieces away from home. So I'm certainly gonna want to mitigate Villa's fouls in and around the box, mitigate corner opportunities, things like that. We've seen Emi Martinez in recent weeks have trouble with his parries, have trouble with people in and around him on long throws and on corner kicks and things like that. So I'm certain that Brighton has seen that as well, and it's something that they're going to try and take advantage of. The biggest thing that sticks out to me, though, is the fact that you mentioned Karu Matoma, and in years past, it seemed like so much of Brighton's attack went down the left where he primarily operated. This year is different. They're actually going a ton down the right. And in my limited research, I didn't necessarily find a reason as to why that is. Matoma's end product hasn't necessarily been there. He doesn't necessarily have a ton of goal contributions, but they're going down the right side like 39% of the time, particularly away from home. So I don't know what to make of that, except that Luka Dean obviously struggled in the last game. Matty Cash has become so reliable down the right. Ian Maatsen maybe a little bit less so on the defensive side. That battle between whoever Villa started at left back and Brighton's right side is certainly something that I'm going to be watching.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm glad you called that out because it is a big change from years past.
The other thing to keep in mind, Chris, is that Brighton are terrible away from home, 2-4-6 overall record so far this year. So, again, good squad, like you said. Certainly a team that can challenge anyone in the league. They've proven that. But we are getting them, while not at the right time, at least in the right location.
Sure. Yep. 100%.
So,
what? You go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, last thing before we get to Villa, not a ton of, I would say, super impactful injuries for them. They're guys that we know. They're certainly like solid squad players, but not any of their stars. Simis Webster, Solly March, Ayari, who I feel like always creates at least one opportunity against Villa. All should be out injured from the news that I'm reading, but otherwise, they've got a full complement of guys. So this might have been where you were going, Chris.
Yeah.
You're Unai Emery. What are you doing? What are you kind of expecting from Villa?
I'm not 100% sure what Emery's going to do, and a lot of this is probably reactionary on my part because I'm still thinking about the Bournemouth game. But there are relatively limited opportunities where Emery can make changes, but I think you're going to see Emi Martinez, Cash, Konsa, Pau, Ian Maatsen along the back. Onana and Luiz, I think, again, are going to be the midfield pair. Potentially Bogard, but I think it's going to be Onana. Sancho, Rogers, Buendia up top. And I did wrestle with Tammy Abraham making the start, but I think it's going to be Watkins. So 2 changes from Bournemouth. But if it were me, I might make more just because the team was so lackluster against Bournemouth.
Yeah, I have Emmy in goal, Cash, Konsa, Pau back in for Mings. I don't necessarily think Mings starting worked for what we needed to do, and we've got another team that's potentially going to be fairly aggressive defensively. So I want Pau's ability to pass through that press. And then I have Ian Maatsen on the left. 3 days, going to have the rotation. Luka Dean did not do all that well. Douglas Luiz again. I actually do have Bogard starting just because Onana, with the muscle fatigue that made him miss the previous game, you saw him probably 65 minutes in this one really start to struggle. I think physically, I don't know what he's got going on, but with his injury record and with him clearly struggling in the Bournemouth match, I think he'll be rested again and be used more as a bench option. So Luiz and Bogard. Sancho has done enough in my mind to now be, I guess, the written on starter in the right wing. Rogers and Buendia. I do have Tammy Abraham up top. But I take your point. I think Unai is very familiar with Ollie Watkins' psychological struggles when there's another striker available. And for whatever reason, Ollie seems to be a guy that Unai loves to persist with, unless the backup is named Marcus Rashford. So yeah, I would start Tammy, but I'm not going to be surprised if Ollie Watkins is leading the line again.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of play, we've had a couple games now where we've said Villa are going to test this one out, probably be slow to start, all that kind of stuff. I'm actually expecting a quick start from Villa in this one, more akin to some of our European matches, maybe the way that we played against Newcastle, where it seemed like Villa really started out the aggressor. We need to turn this run of form around somehow. And if the team, after the nature of that Bournemouth, I almost said defeat, after that Bournemouth draw, I think that says it all, though. Psychologically, got to be in the gutter right now.
Yeah.
And so I think to kind of sit back at home over the course of the first 10 to 15 minutes to kind of feel this one out, see where Brighton's going to be, I worry about the lasting impact that's going to have. So I think you will see maybe a little conservatism on the ball at first, that kind of slow play out the back, try and break the lines and then attack quick. But the goal is ultimately going to be to attack quick, not to work the ball down the pitch slowly, give it up to Brighton, play long, all that kind of stuff. I would expect us to utilize Sancho, really try and target Morgan Rogers early to see what he can create, and really get us running at the Brighton defense, because need to get some positive momentum going, and an early goal is always going to do that for us. We still have not lost when we've gone ahead first.
And I mean, the murmuring around Villa Park would happen, if it's goalless at halftime or something like that. So what do you expect for a final score?
Chris, it's so hard to pick a Villa win right now. It really is. I am afraid that this one might be another 1-1 draw.
I feel sort of the same, but I will say 2-1 Aston Villa, and we get off the schneid here, the relative schneid that we're on. 2-1 Aston Villa, big 3 points, and hopefully that catapults Villa into maintaining their position in the league.
You gotta hope so. And we need a slip up from United or Chelsea at some point. You look at their upcoming matches. United's got West Ham on Tuesday, and they play Everton after that, who are sitting in 8th place right now. Maybe that's a little more difficult. Crystal Palace sliding, Newcastle sliding, all before they play Aston Villa. So you don't necessarily see any extremely difficult games to knock them off this run that they're on. And then meanwhile, you look at Chelsea. I won't go all the way down to Liverpool, but Chelsea may be a little more difficult. Leeds, Burnley, but then they do have to go to Arsenal before they get to us. So a little bit more of a difficult road for them, but Villa have to stack up 3 points in as many games as they can. We obviously covered this in the last one. Chris, before we go, though, I want to ask you this. So we've got Leeds and we've got Newcastle coming up in the Cup, FA Cup. And we talk about this all the time. But given the squad depth of where it's at, given what Villa want to accomplish, not just in this year, but next year as well, are you punting the FA Cup at this point? Or do you see that as an opportunity to get some positive momentum going at Villa Park in front of the fans, and you kind of need to take the risk of tiring the squad out, because the vibes could potentially be better with a win and a little bit of a cup run?
I tend to go toward the latter, because I think winning a trophy is really important to the fans, and long term, like you and I can sit and look at the long term from a distance, from being here in America and not being at the ground every week and all that sort of stuff. But talking with and listening to other podcasts and all those things, a trophy is the most important thing to many, 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 many Villa fans. Not just like not a European run, not making it in Champions League and making the quarterfinals. Winning an FA Cup would be so much bigger than a deep Champions League run to a lot of people. And I think I don't think from a vibe standpoint you can stand to punt the FA Cup at this point.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Even more so for your last point there. So I'm not even sure it's so much that a cup run galvanizes the team or the fan base to play better, but I think that losing another game at home in quick succession to the other ones has the potential to be more detrimental to the team and the fan base than at least giving it a go and potentially getting a win there. So that's why I would agree. In terms of a trophy, look, you play to win the game, right? Dennis Green all those years ago, or no, Herm Edwards. Dennis Green is who we thought they were.
It was Herm Edwards.
Yeah, Herm Edwards was you play to win the game. But you play to win the game, you play to get trophies, and that's why we're all here. Everybody used to mock Arsene Wenger for when Arsenal were going through their trophyless spell for saying that fourth place was a trophy every single year. It's not. As much as you and I want to see this club continuing to compete for Champions League at the upper reaches of the Premier League, sustaining title challenges past December 30th, continual competition in the Champions League does that probably more than an FA Cup trophy. Like, let's be honest, most of these guys are not from England. I don't think Amadou Onana is doing a 180 on his term of one day playing for a big club and all of a sudden thinking that's Villa just because we win one FA Cup if we're not in the Champions League again. But that would just feel so good. All the struggles that Crystal Palace are going through right now, I'm sure they wouldn't trade that trophy to just be in the Champions League places right now.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that at the end of the day, that's really all you need to say about it.
Yep. I think you're right.
All right. Anything else on this one?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Well, everyone, like we said, might not be back until early next week, but we will do our best for you, get something out as soon as humanly possible. So we appreciate you all. Stick with us. We'll be back. And until then, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.